How's it going, everybody? It's Ryan, and welcome to my studio. Now today I'm going to introduce you all to one of my just closest and dearest friends. I can always count on him. He's always there for me and is just always clinging to my side. And here he is. Okay, so in addition to really good coffee, there are other studio essentials that every artist should have, particularly if you are a painter. This is one of them. Now, I know a lot of painters, and a lot of them use a lot of different palettes. For instance, a lot of them use just a glass palette that they make themselves, and they'll set it at their side or wherever, and they'll work that way. The way I see it, to each their own. Whatever works for you is the way to go. Whatever's comfortable, whatever's convenient. And with that said, I'll say this: I made a glass palette. In fact, I have it sitting right here. And I used it for a short period of time just to kind of try it out, and I really didn't like it because I would find myself, working on my painting and then turning away to get more color on my brush, and then turning back and just kind of shifting focus from my canvas to my palette and back and forth and back and forth, and I didn't like it. And that was really the only convenient way to use this glass palette. I didn't really have a better way of setting it up. So I just had it sitting right here at my side, or on this side. And that's what I found myself doing, is just kind of shifting focus from one to another. And it was big, it was bulky, it took up a lot of space, and I don't know, I just felt kind of cluttered. Using this glass palette, and so I used it for a little bit, but then I just kind of said, okay, I'm going back to my wooden palettes, because number one, I'm a traditional guy, and so I like the traditional wood palettes. I want to talk to you guys about the colors that I have on my palette and what I use them for. Now, in previous videos, you guys have seen my palette, and you know that I don't have all of these colors on my palette at one time. I just kind of laid them out like this to show you the most frequently used colors that I have for any of my paintings, for landscapes or for portraits, or still lifes for that matter. And these, I would say, are the most frequently used colors, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them and what I use them for, and what kind of paints they are. Okay, so here's my palette. I'm just going to very briefly, if I can, just go around and talk about each one. This is my titanium white. It's just a thick, opaque white that I use for every painting. I also use lead white, which is not on the palette right now, but I use lead white for painting the flesh. For the most part. Lead white is not quite as thick, not quite as opaque as titanium white, and so I typically use lead white when I'm building up a painting in layers. And so anyway, this is Naples yellow. It's just a very pale, earthy kind of yellow, very similar to this, which is yellow ochre, and I use pretty much both of these for painting flesh, portraits and figures. This is cadmium yellow, which I use exclusively for landscape painting. It's a very bright, vibrant kind of yellow, and very opaque. Pretty much all the cadmiums are going to be opaque colors. So that's cadmium yellow. This is vermilion, which is another very opaque, very strong, orangish type of red. And I use it pretty much for all my paintings, whether I'm doing landscapes or figures. I'll have vermilion on my palette. And it's a very, like I said, warm orange type of red color. And this is cadmium red medium, which is pretty much what it sounds like. It's a medium red. It's not warm like my vermilion, and it's not really cool like my crimson here. It's just pretty much right in between these two. It's just a pretty standard red. This is Mars red, which is also a very strong, very opaque, kind of burgundy, earthy type of red. And I use it pretty much for anything. Painting the flesh, it creates a really nice, subtle type of pink. It's pretty dark, even with a little bit of white mixed into it. In contrast to, this is Crimson Lake, and Crimson Lake is mostly used as a glazing color because it's so transparent. And so I'll use it pretty much for glazing, but also it makes a nice pink color for painting the flesh when mixed with white, as you can see. But it's pretty much on the cool side of the red spectrum. It's actually on the purplish side, depending on what kind of crimson you use. This is actually a little bit warmer than most crimsons. Most crimsons are a lot cooler than what I have here, but anyway, it's crimson. This is burnt sienna, and I've also mixed up a little bit of it with some white to kind of show you what I use it for. It's actually a really good color for just an initial primitive base flesh layer. Because burnt sienna is actually it's a reddish brown color, and when mixed with white, it creates just a nice, very basic flesh color. And so I'll use this as a sort of a base for painting the flesh. So that's burnt sienna. This is viridian, which is a cool green color that I use mostly for landscapes, but also for subtleties of greenish tone for when I'm painting the flesh. Viridian is a good color to use. And this right here is sap green, which is a very warm green in comparison to viridian, and I use sap green pretty much exclusively for landscape painting. This is ultramarine blue, which is just a very, very cold blue. Compared to this color right here, this is indigo, and I've mixed up a little bit of indigo with white to kind of show you its hue. And it is it's much warmer in comparison to ultramarine, and it's also very dark. It's very deep, very strong. And I'll use indigo, and I'll also use this. This is dioxazine purple. I'll use either one of these for areas of just dark shadow. And both of them work really well because they are so dark. And I'll also use dioxazine when I'm painting subtleties of violet in areas of flesh, for when I'm painting figures and portraits. So that's dioxazine purple. And by the way, this is Winsor & Newton, and most of these are Williamsburg handmade oils, by the way. This is not a paid endorsement of Williamsburg, but I'm just kind of sharing what I use. And most of these are Williamsburg. The Crimson Lake and the Burnt Sienna are both Michael Harding paints. And the dioxazine, as I said, is Winsor & Newton. But everything else is Williamsburg. Okay, so this is my raw umber, and you know what I use it for. It's just my underpainting color. And I pretty much abandon all brown after that, unless I want to mix some white with it to create a gray to bring down the chroma of any of the other color mixtures that I have. I'll use raw umber for that. And then finally is cold black. Now I know a lot of you, and myself included, we have been taught at some point in our lives to not use black in a painting. And obviously I have abandoned that idea. And let me tell you why. Because for a long time I was taught not to use black, and for a long time I didn't use black. And the reason that I decided to start using black is because I figured out how to use it. And I'm convinced that anyone who teaches you to not use black in a painting is probably somebody who does not know how to use black themselves. And so I'm going to get into color mixing in a later video because I don't want this to go just extremely long. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to use black in a painting. And pretty much the one thing I will say right now is that the way to use black in a painting is to mix it with some other color. And but I'll be getting into that later on, about how to use it and how to mix it with other colors and what colors to mix it with to create, to create whatever. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at this. Just wanted to show you guys the most frequently used colors that I use for any of my paintings, and to give you a little insight of just what I enjoy using. And hope you guys enjoy this. Hope you learned something, got something out of it, and I hope you guys will stick around, and I will see you in the next one. So take care, and God bless you all.